Three of you onto the stage. I'm very happy to have you all on here. Some of you I know very well, and we collaborated in the past. So to kick it off, as we're talking about on-chain media, the first thing I want to ask is, why should creators be coming on-chain? Like, what is it that they're really gaining by doing that instead of going with traditional platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and everything else?
Yeah, I'll give it a start. So we really boil this down to three things on why creators should be coming on-chain. The first one is monetization. So when you publish on-chain, you can monetize the content per content, right? So every piece of content is on-chain, it's an NFT, you can collect it for as little as 20 cents. So that's the big one, and that's available to anyone no matter your audience size. So monetization, permissionless monetization is one of the big unlocks that every creator gets by publishing on-chain. The second one is analytics, and it's actually understanding the individuals behind your audience. So when you publish on YouTube or Spotify or anything like that, all you get is like macro level data of, I got 5,000 views, half of them were from the US, maybe you get some demographics of like, you were mostly male or female.
You're getting 5,000 views, that's good.
I'm hypothetical, I wish.
Oh, okay.
Right? And what the NFTs allow you to do is to understand the individuals behind the audience. So you can see that Humpty here actually converted on my Vitalik episode and has been collecting ever since. Nounish's favorite episode was my episode with Jesse Pollock. I'm making all this stuff up, but you get the idea. Of
course it would be,
What
yes.
you get is the understanding the individuals that make up your audience. And that's not really possible right now in Web 2. And then the third one, which I didn't really realize when I was starting pods, is actually discovery. So you're actually unlocking new distribution channels for your content. So like a prime example of this is getting placement on Coinbase Wallet, right? So when you publish on Base, Coinbase Wallet is pretty inclined to surface that content on their wallet to the millions of users. And through that, you get additional viewership and plays, and you kind of get this new distribution channel that we didn't know existed. And what's really cool is that distribution channel is completely public. So if someone mints it, you kind of think of it as like a repost. So that might show up on interface. Someone might come across that content on interface. They might mint it. Then that kind of has this like trickle down waterfall effect. So yeah, that's the three reasons that we think about it: is monetization, analytics, and discovery.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. One of the other things is you can, with the technology, you have opportunities to do things for your community or to connect better with your community. So, for example, early on, before we had a subscription like Hypersub, we would use, for those who minted our podcast, they were invited to events. They got special perks in our channel on Warpcast, things like that. So that's another reason to publish on chain. I think it's also kind of about ownership, where we kind of shifted from, okay, I'm going back. I'm old. I'm probably the oldest person in this room. Gonna go on a limb. And but I think, Humpty, you're at least old enough to remember when you had vinyl, you had cassettes, you had CDs, and then we shifted everything to streaming. And even before streaming, when it went digital, you still owned an MP3, you owned an iTunes, whatever. And we kind of shifted away from ownership and more to just consuming. And this shifts us a little bit back to ownership. And I think there's something to that. It's not for everyone. Not everyone's a collector. I happen to be a digital hoarder, but that's, you can go look at my wallet and you'll understand. But it's, for a lot of people, that is a thing that they like. So that's part of it too. And then going back to like unlocking opportunities and experiences, Nouns had used for the Nouns documentary, and also the Ethereum Foundation, when they did the Ethereum films, they used Bonfire. So if you owned a certain NFT, you could get a sneak peek. You got an early, release of that content before it was available wide. So things like that, I think we can do with this technology that you can't do with just traditional social media or traditional digital only.
And I think that's actually a great point and great segue for Lee. We were just talking about moments ago about Spaceport, and you were talking about IP. This part about like ownership and the ability to kind of grow and scale this like intellectual property. Can you talk a little bit more about how that looks like on Spaceport and why people should be using something like that, and just generally how that works?
Totally, yeah. And so just for everyone's benefit here, Spaceport is the development company for Spaceport Protocol. That's an IP licensing platform. So for creators that want to bring their content to other creators to license out, to create additional content, if you're a large brand and you want to reach an audience of UGC creators, you would use us. If you're a small brand and you want to tap into big brands and co-create with them, you'd work with us too. So our largest client to date is Toei Animation. They're the largest animation company in Japan. They're the owners of Dragon Ball and Digimon, Sailor Moon, all the favorites that we grew up with.
Well, some of you.
Well, you've heard of them.
My kid probably.
Digimon was sick.
And we're their partner in basically distributing their content into the decentralized world, and that includes both on-chain and off-chain. So when you said earlier, Humpty, why should we be on-chain instead of on YouTube and other platforms? It's not instead of. Yeah, it's all together.
It's not instead. It's in addition, and yeah, I agree.
And so it's more about the problem with just launching on YouTube today is that all of these traditional Web 2 companies are closed gardens, closed ecosystems. They want to capture your time and attention and your value, and then use that to generate money for themselves. As a creator, that's fine, right? You want to reach that audience, but you also want to reach the audience of TikTok and all of these other platforms. And so I see Web3 as a big opportunity to connect all of these closed ecosystems and amplify distribution even further, and really ultimately ensuring that your content is viewed by as many individuals, by as many consumers and other creators as possible. And so I'd say a couple of the other really important values that Web3 brings to the table. One is trust, which is making sure that the content that you upload is verified, validated, so that when other people use it from all around the world, going to composability, if you want your design to be sold by a shop in Japan, in Tokyo, for streetwear, you want the official version of that to be transmitted and to be sold and to be created. So Web3 and the underlying protocols and foundations, some things that we're creating, some things that our partners are creating, are enabling that to happen.
You bring something up that I think actually Nounishprof started with here, and that's this interop that's unlocked through Web3 that is maybe not as seamless or possible at all with Web 2 media. What are some of the things that you've seen, like some case studies or good examples of either people or projects that are leveraging this interoperability or these Legos that on-chain tools like pods potentially enables, where creators can unlock new experience or opportunities for themselves and their audiences?
I think that, that was a good example of like, you get that sneak peek, you get those kind of things. You can also reward your holders. So we can go, and you can talk about that with pods, but even beyond that, like if you know that these folks hold that token, you can do a lot of things. It can even, we're not there yet. I don't want to, don't SEC me, don't at me. But there's a potential there for a media company that grows to be able to share revenue with the holders of the media itself. So without even knowing who they are. I don't need to know you. I just need to know that this wallet holds this token. And that really can open up some opportunity for creators. Again, we're not quite there yet because we have some regulatory confusion still, although we're getting there. But I think there's opportunity there for some really cool things.
Yeah.
The reward part of it. Yeah, if you want to talk about the sponsor.
I think, there's a lot of opportunities for the interoperability side. I think like one thing that's really interesting is for projects, like the big one that we're trying to push for is like, okay, if I'm Eigenlayer, there is a bunch of content on chain on pods that covers Eigenlayer, right? So maybe what I want to do is actually airdrop Eigen tokens to the collectors of all the Eigenlayer content. And what's really interesting about this is that what it effectively does is it creates this positive flywheel for content creators to start creating content about your project, because collectors are going to mint your your content about that project because you know that they're going to get rewarded in the future. So when you create eigenlayer content and there's this kind of social contract that, you know, at some point in the future, eigenlayer is going to do this airdrop, now all these creators are incentivized to start creating eigenlayer content because people are going to get rewarded for supporting those content creators. So there's like a really interesting flywheel there. And then the other thing is like sponsorships. So we do this thing on Pods where you can effectively give out tokens as a reward for minting. And what's really exciting about this is, to us, this is a significantly better kind of brand sponsorship. So today, when a creator gets a brand deal, they just throw some ad in the content, they throw a link in the show notes, and the consumer gets fucked, you know, whatever. In this new on-chain sponsorship, I'm sorry if I'm allowed to swear, but sorry. In this new kind of world, effectively these brands can give the community tokens in return for minting the content, right? And this at least aligns the consumer to have upside in the brand that is sponsoring the content. And two, these brands actually get new token holders and new addresses that interact with their protocol or their token. So it's a significantly better advertisement. If you think about getting an address that holds your token is going to be significantly better than some arbitrary 2% click-through rate on your link in the show notes from Spotify. Like, it's obviously significantly better, and then you can continue to reactivate it. So, you know, maybe those token holders or those collectors get early access to the next beta of your, you know, next version of your launch or whatever it is. So
I want to mention too, that's permissionlessly. So on Pods, like we can just put up our episode, and then, you know, someone else could come in if it was one of the approved tokens, say the DGen team on Farcaster is like, hey, we want to sponsor that episode. What they're doing is incentivizing people to mint it and then getting a rebate essentially back in that token. So it's not that they have to do anything major on the back end. They're letting the folks decide if that's a good enough incentive to go ahead and mint, and the creators getting rewarded for that, because each mint you're getting half of whatever comes in. So the project's, you know, Pods is able to create some sustainability. The creator gets some you know, additional rewards, and I think that's really, really helpful. And I like the idea of all these interoperable things, but I you know, don't start, you know, yelling out at Spotify. We still need them. So in terms of distribution, we still need Web 2 right now. I mean, I'd love to get to a point where we only need to be on Pods, or we only need to be in, you know, Web3 spaces. And we tried that in the beginning. We were very much like, we're going to be on-chain only. And it didn't take long before our own audience was like, can you please put it on YouTube also? We're like, okay. So we had to you kind of have to go where the people are, because at the end of the day, we want them to be consuming this content. We want them to be a part of our community. So we have to go where they are at the moment, but continuously, you know, sort of encourage them also to find those Web3 spaces too.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I wanted to add, and then I'll let you go, Lee, is effectively what we try and do, especially with on-chain media as a whole, is you want to make this an entirely additive experience and effectively meet the creators where they are already and not try and take them away from where they're at. Like, it is ridiculous to think that any crypto media company or like media platform can compete with YouTube's distribution or Spotify's distribution. So it's, how do you create these additive experiences that are entirely beneficial, net beneficial to the creator, and not trying to pull them away from the existing flow and all the existing audiences and eyeballs and all that.
And I do like that we now can add the YouTube link so that we have the video in Pods, and that was our hesitation to moving to Pods, because we wanted that video aspect to it, but having that combo works great. It's a perfect fit.
And I have a lot of experience here bringing creators to our distribution partners, and that includes big platforms like Roblox, where you have 350 million active players every month, right? It's a huge number. And just even thinking about the growth of Roblox itself, Roblox grew because they leveraged YouTube and YouTubers to drive attention back to Roblox, right? And so that cross-pollination effect is something we should take advantage of, right? So let's get on Spotify and then provide value added on top of Pods, and that's how you can grow based off of the backs of these existing platforms.
One thing I wanted to say, because I think y'all are bringing a lot of amazing points. One of them has to do with like the ability to understand your audience. I think it's better than ever. While it's being transparent, I know one person we know did a lot of this experimenting early is Adam, with the ability to understand someone's profile or personality just based on what they collect. All of this data is on chain, it's open, it's permissionless, you can build on top of that, and I think that's one of the really cool things that we see in the space, and the ability to develop new tools and platforms so that you can create new experiences and add value to the entire flow, not just the creative flow, but the collector or the audience flow as well. And I think when it comes to collaboration, to the point that Lee was making right now, I think it really is interesting to see the potential in understanding the intersection between the interests of two very different companies, but that have a shared audience. And how can we leverage that, not just in crypto, but also through other platforms that are probably doing a better job at connecting the Web2 space and media and establishing these collaborations? Because you don't have to look too far. You can go to YouTube and see YouTubers collaborating with one another and growing their audience, synergistically. And the same can be said on TikTok and any other traditional Web2 platform. It's a proven growth strategy. So I wonder if anybody has any thoughts in terms of how collaboration has looked like to you going into kind of using these Web3 tools, and some of the new opportunities that it's opened up as well.
Yeah, I think one of the easy things is that effectively every podcast has a guest, or that's a big piece of podcast as a whole. And what we did is we implemented splits. So you can actually share revenue with that guest. They're now more incentivized to share the episode and promote it, all that kind of stuff, and they get upside in the content that they helped create. And that's just a very easy kind of straightforward thing that's only possible really with Web3, is that you can split revenue at the point of transaction and distribute it immediately to those people, and give them upside in your creation and your work.
And we're doing that with other creators as well. So we're working with Toady Hawk and Jack Wilds and ZeroPod. And we're doing a monthly recap of our content. They're doing some editing, adding some of their flair to it, and doing a split if it's monetized at all. So where you're seeing those, and like you said, being able to do it at a contract level makes a huge difference. It takes out a lot of friction from having to do the accounting of it all. It's just done automatically.
We implement the same exact system, smart contract splits, on-chain royalty splits, and accounting, hugely valuable, right? And especially if you're scaling up. And for us at Spaceport, we work with brands that want to license their content out to as many creators as possible. That's one of the beauties of intellectual property and building an audience and a fan base, is that you have fans all around the world that want your content, and their demand is probably not being met right now because you're only one creator, or you have a small network of creators. There's other people out there that want to satisfy that demand. How do you reach them, and how do you scalably allow everyone to win and on a fair platform? Web3 is the perfect tool to enable the revenue splits, the contracting, even the discoverability, so you can find those co-creators in the first place.
When we were doing our even discoverability, things like interface can be really great for that. You see who you're following, is what they're minting, things like that in your feed. And when we had our videos on Zora, you could even watch it directly in that feed as well. So there's some really great opportunity there to play with.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of still new behaviors that are being developed and that could probably be better developed in the future in terms of how you interact with this content. One of the things that I would like us to touch on, because I think we already talked about YouTube and Spotify, we're creators that are probably crypto first or crypto native first, and then going out to the Web2 audience. What are some of the things that you think need to be improved as a creator who's on YouTube, interested in coming on chain, or someone who's got a large audience on TikTok and maybe is doing affiliate marketing and is doing very well on that platform that way? What are some things that you, as a developer, as a creator, as a platform builder, what are some things that you feel can be improved, even if it's something very small that allows for that transition to be much more simple?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of things to do at Pods on that front. I think the first thing is one, allow email login, very straightforward. The second one that I think we're really excited about experimenting with is actually shifting over to stablecoin payments or pricing, because when you have an email address login and stablecoin pricing, you won't even know you're using crypto, and you have kind of a native off-ramp into it. You know, if people are just earning dollars and they're publishing on-chain in a few clicks and they're logging in and managing that account with their email, like you're effectively abstracted the whole like complexity of crypto. So I would say those three things, because like even right now, it's like even if you just have email login, they're still getting ETH. The price is changing all the time. Who's a happy ETH holder right now? No one. So like, you got to deal with those issues. So I think like, yeah, email login, social login, stablecoin payments really just solve a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'd also say that I don't think those who have really big audiences on Web2 platforms, they're not coming. And they're just not. It's not going to be worth it for them to try and make that move unless they're doing crypto content, then it makes sense. Otherwise, it's probably not. But you have smaller creators who are in the process of developing a following, and maybe they have a good following on Instagram, they have a good following on TikTok, but it's not enough for them to monetize there, because you have to be a huge account to really make bank in any of those spaces. So somebody like Naomi, who's Afro Chicks on Warpcast, she had that, you know, where she was earning a little bit, but not really, and then she moved over to a Web3 approach and on Warpcast, and has earned, you know, way more than she would have doing content. And she does great content. So it was getting the views, but she wasn't able to capture value from those views, and now she can in Web3. And it's a great case study of that approach.
Yeah, so hiding the wires, right? That's like the immediate thing that comes to mind, which is there's so much complexity in Web3 because we started off as such a technical product. So I think that's a major initiative by everyone who's building consumer applications this year, and really important to on-ramp real users. And then the second piece is just solving real problems for them, right? At the end of the day, it's not about the technology. It's not about, you know, the new ERCs that you're implementing. It's about how can a creator reach more viewers or make more money or be more inspired to work with other creators, get distribution. So I think there's a lot of opportunities that have yet to be uncovered using the technology, and it's time for us to start thinking about what are the core problems that creators are feeling today, and then start digging into the technology and figuring out the pieces that we can bring to creators to solve more problems for them.
I kind of want to push back on what she said, Prof, of we won't see any big Web2 creators coming on chain, or it's not worth it for them. Here's my thing, is if you can say to a Web2 creator, hey, you can earn $10,000 extra on every single piece of content, you'll understand the individuals behind your audience, you'll be able to reach out to them, and it's only going to take you 30 seconds on every single piece of content that you publish. 100% they will come on chain. I've made this pitch to a lot of them, and they're all, you know, interested. I think the issues right now is like, I got to get you an ETH address, we got to get you ETH on base, we got to, you know, do all this stuff. There's really not compelling reasons right now to collect this stuff, so to bring in your Web2 audience. So there's a lot of problems and stuff that we need to solve, and we're not necessarily there yet, but the value proposition is there. Once you kind of iron out all these kinks, there's no reason not to be publishing on chain, and I'd assume in the next 5 years, almost every creator is.
I agree with that. I think the friction is too much right now for most of the larger creators. It's not going to be worth it for them yet, but I think a couple of years from now, that's probably not the case. I think you're right. And that's based on from conversations I've had with, you know, a friend of mine who's a stand-up comedian and things like that. And it's like, it's too much complexity at this moment, but I think you're right. It won't be very soon. Yeah,
and to a certain extent, like at one point, it won't matter that it's Web3 technology, it's just technology, right? And so then it's just a product that happens to make you know, your friends' lives better, and you know, at some point they're going to start adopting it.
But I will say also, I think a lot of TikTok creators got a little wake-up call about centralization. So very recently, when they all thought they were losing their livelihood, and then didn't. But I mean, there's that possibility is always there. You always have the possibility of deplatforming. That is one other incentive. But again, they have to weigh the cost benefit of like, is it worth it, my time and energy to do this if it's too complex?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that that is a big piece of like, you do get to own the content. So even if, you know, I decide to be a dictator and deplatform you from pods, like you actually still own all of that. You never know. But like you still own the content because it's effectively a smart contract that owns that content and that feed, and that's entirely, you know, possible to replicate or like surface that content in other places. So I don't think that's the sexiest feature until it becomes, you know, like you actually needed like the TikTok instance of like, wait, where did all my content go?
Yeah.
My earnings potential just went to the, you know, to zero, all that.
And we have another big driver right now that I don't know if it's like a banned word right now, but talking about AI. And I think at the end of the, I think at the rate that we're going right now, by the end of this year, 99%, over 99% of the content on the internet is going to be AI generated. And so what does that mean for creators that have to compete with autonomous agentic AIs that are pumping out content 24/7? How do you stand out? How do you differentiate? I think personally, at the end of the day, we're still going to discriminate against content that's made by humans. And then we're going to need a way to indicate that there's human authorship, that it's legitimate, that it's trustworthy, and blockchain happens to be the best solution for
Proof
that.
of human.
So we're very quickly and accelerated by AI getting to a point where we may have to adopt Web3 technologies in mainstream in order to keep our societal foundation going.
I heard a Notebook LLM podcast, and the voice sounded exactly like mine, and I was like, oh shit, like that's
you're
not
right, yeah.
good. And I'm like, that's a little unnerving. Like, don't be go using me for that.
The problem is you have a nice voice. Nobody wants to imitate mine. I sound like a Muppet.
So that's my problem. I just have to, yeah. I need a worse voice, and then I'm fine.
Yeah, my question is like, where do you draw the line? Like if a creator
Yeah.
prompts the creation of the content, do we then like, but these still publish it, or like, where do you draw the line? Like obviously if it's an autonomous agent, like publishing content on its own, like,
Right.
yeah, that's maybe more straightforward, but yeah, I think it is a really interesting like fine line of like, what exactly is AI created content when everyone has these tools available and, you know, is prompting to draft their tweet or anything like that, you know?
There is that checkbox now when you're uploading to YouTube that asks you that exact question, and I think
Really?
we'll
Honor
see.
system.
Yeah, we'll see more detection rather than, you know, having to say no, it's not made with AI kind of thing. You'll have to actually have it detected or something.
That's going to be a crazy cat and mouse game, I think.
Totally.
I think so. Actually,
And not all AI content's bad. I mean,
No,
there's a lot of good
yeah.
stuff out there. So you know.
it can be objectively beautiful content, right? And I think if you didn't know it was AI and you read or you saw an image, I mean, there's been literature and AI generated images that have won awards,
Yeah.
right? And that's caused a lot of controversy. But the Copyright Office, and when it comes to intellectual property rights, only human authored content is protected by IP rights. And this is something that's not common knowledge. The reason why intellectual property laws exist today is to benefit humans and not technology, not AI. And the Copyright Office actually just 2.5 weeks ago launched an updated memo on how they consider copyrightability to apply to, for instance, how much you prompt the agent versus how much you edit it after the fact. And a baseline is basically, unless you're providing significant creative contributions to the work, ideally after the fact, then it's not protected.
I used to be a copyright and trademark attorney. So this is an area that's
Get
like
out.
really interesting.
Really?
Yeah. Well, just many things. I am many things.
Okay, so we're about to reach the end of the conversation, so I want people to take away something actionable here. So we'll start with Lucas. There's a creator that wants to come on chain today. What's the first piece of advice you give them?
Start publishing on whatever platform you can. just start doing it. I don't know. There's no reason not to is kind of what I tell creators. And I'm pretty indifferent at the end of the day right now of like what platform you end up publishing on, because we're very much in this grow the pie phase of this industry. So just start publishing on chain, start experimenting with new things, how to get people to collect this stuff. Just start experimenting, publishing on chain, learn about it, and it's only going to go up from here, up only.
Yep, agree with that. And depending on what it is, I would point them to different tools. If they're a writer, I'm going to point them to Paragraph, where it can be collected. If they're doing a podcast, obviously Pods is going to be your place to go, no question. If you're an artist, there's a number of different directions you can go in, so it's really going to just depend on what they're trying to achieve. But also, I'm probably going to push you towards Base too, just because they are very supportive of creators, and you're going to be able to also, I think there's going to be some interesting things with the new revamped Coinbase wallet that's going to create some interesting opportunities for creators. And this is all very rumor, high level. I don't know a lot, but I can see the hints coming from Jesse and the team. So that's the only other thing I'd say.
Insider info.
I know nothing.
She's part of a cabal.
I am not part of the cabal. I am not in the Coinbase Mafia. I might be in the Farcaster Mafia. We'll see.
LA Vape Cabal?
Definitely not.
So Spaceport actually just announced this week our dedicated layer 2 that's superchain compatible, purpose-built for creative assets. So our goal is to help creators and brands go through this life cycle of establishing trust, providing composability, discoverability for their works, for licensing partners, co-creation, for distribution onto mainstream platforms. Sorry, this all kind of ended up being a big ad for my big reveal at the end, but I think everything that we talked about is relevant to why we built Cultura, which is our layer 2, and why it's important for creators. I'd love to get Pods on Cultura as well.
Let's talk about it.
Let's go.
All right, well, I want to thank you all, Lucas, Nounishprof, and Lee, for coming up here and sharing your insights. Yeah, we have some noggles, by the way. If you don't know what nouns are, definitely check in with Prof, but we're going to give some noggles away. Raise your hand, and Russ is going to hand some out.